Welcome. See people coming in slowly but surely. Thanks for joining us today. We'll get started in just a moment here. All right. Well, as people are coming in, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to be a part of the Force for Positive Change this year and to be presenting. I'll give you an overview of who's speaking in just a moment, but we're here from gBETA, and we'll tell you more about us, to talk to you about purposeful impact, companies making positive social change. So just to give you a sense of who we are and where we're coming from, I'm Lauren Usher. I'm the gBETA Social Impact Managing Director at gBETA, and we'll tell you all about what we do as a company in just a moment. I'm joined by Joe Baz and Mfoniso Ekong, who are our gBETA Social Impact Directors. And I'm also pleased to be joined by Nicole Sdao, founder and CEO of Ultrarise. And you will get a great opportunity to learn more about what she does and how she built up Altruize and what it's all about towards the end of our presentation. So just to give you an overview roadmap of where we're going today, we're going to cover really briefly just what gBETA is so that you kind of understand why we're here today, and it'll give some good context for some of the programs and events that we offer for social entrepreneurs like yourselves, or maybe some folks in your network that you can spread the word to. And then we're going to do a founder feature later on with Nicole so that you can hear from her directly and ask her some questions that you might have about what it's been like to build a social enterprise from scratch and continue to build it up over the years. So we'll just get started with a brief gBETA overview. So at gBETA, our mission is really to be the best partner for a community to invest in its best and brightest. And we really think deeply about what each part of this mission means to us. And I always like to highlight the best and brightest portion. So who is that? You know, sometimes when people are thinking about startup founders, they think of guys working in the garage to build the next new app. And at gBETA, we've really broadened out our sense of who the best and brightest is and what that means to us. So it can definitely be guys in the garage creating an app, but it can also be women, underrepresented founders, perhaps formerly incarcerated founders, people new to the entrepreneurship space who have never thought of themselves as founders before, people who have lived experience in addition to expertise or education. You know, we think that lived experience is another aspect that really makes someone the best person to create a solution to problems they might see in the world. So how do we carry out this mission? The gBETA platform is really a space full of different programs, events, and offerings that connect startup founders, aspiring founders, artists, musicians, investors, researchers, corporations. And I'll tell you a little bit about some of our products and services just so that you understand the variety of products that we have. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we have PreAccelerators and accelerators, and then we have corporations in the center, and I'll tell you a little bit about how they kind of plug into our network. And then we also have culture programs and upskilling programs that are pretty new. But what I'll do is I'll actually start at the accelerator side because that is where gBETA began. And I'll just pause because I see something in the chat, so I'm gonna ask, Joe and Mfoniso to just let me know if anything comes up that would be clarifying for anyone, but also wanted to let the audience know, please submit questions through the Q&A or comments in the chat throughout to let us know what you're thinking about what we're saying. So gBETA started back in 2012 with our accelerator programs, which are 12-week programs for startup entrepreneurs where we invest financially into companies in exchange for ownership in their company. And we run them through a set of mentorship-based programming where we're coaching them on building the business, we're introducing them to investors and mentors who might be subject matter experts and can help them build the business up. And we're really trying to further them along their path to fundraising for the company. And the reason that gBETA started there in Wisconsin back in 2012 was because we saw what was happening on the coasts, East Coast, West Coast, There was a lot of venture capital and investment activity. And the founders, the co-founders of Generator thought, we can do this in the Midwest. We have this kind of financing here too. And we have a lot of tech talent and other startup talent where people are building companies to solve big social issues in the world right here in the Midwest. So let's not have our talent go out to the coasts, but let's bring the funding to the Midwest. So they started this set of accelerator programs. And then they kind of moved backwards in this image here to the PreAccelerators, because the accelerator programs were becoming more and more competitive with lots of companies applying to them from across the US. And what the co-founders really wanted to do was to support early stage founders who were getting their feet wet building a company. And so they built out in time the gBETA and gAlpha programs, which respectively, gBETA is for companies that have been established for a little while, a year or two, are maybe having their minimum viable product ready to go, but are looking to launch and to grow and build their customer base. And then gAlpha, which is even the step before that, where people are ideating and are learning what is entrepreneurship and how can I get involved in something like entrepreneurship, or maybe how can I build up a solution to a problem that I know really well from personal experience or from my education. And so we help people with gAlpha to build up that idea. And Joe's going to tell you a whole ton more about this. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the origin story. And then why we have the corporations in there is because our corporate network is where we engage with corporate executives, particularly in the innovation arms of businesses, to help them not only communicate with one another, exchange best practices, and learn from other innovation folks, but also they get access to this really early talent that our startups can give them. So we have the corporations on one side, we have the startups on the other side, and our Onramp conferences is like the place where we connect the corporate executives with the startups. So it's where people come together, can have informal conversations and even informal pitches where they're able to talk to our corporate executives about potential funding, potential mentorship, strategic partnerships, or even becoming a customer of theirs. And then we don't want to leave out the culture programs of music and art. We feel that artists and musicians really know how to do their art really well, but what they sometimes don't know as well is how to create a business out of this, how to create make it their life, their livelihood. And so what we do in our Generator Music, Motown, and Generator Art programs is really help people build up the business side of their art or music endeavor and help them to make this a sustainable way for them to live. Why music and art is important to us is because we see all of the Generator products as pieces that make cities really cool, desirable places for people to live, which then, kind of heightens economic development in the cities. And I think most of us would agree that, living in a city with a burgeoning art and music culture that's somewhere where I would want to be. So the final product that I want to go over before I move on is Generator Upskilling, which we actually added just last year, really during the height of the pandemic. And what Generator Upskilling is a program that provides wraparound support to folks who are walking through the LinkedIn Learning certification programs in IT or customer service. And what we do is we provide some accountability so that folks can walk through those programs knowing the timing, how much they need to do maybe after work or after school, kind of juggling all the things that people are generally working on. And at the end of Generator Upskilling, we introduce all of the alumni to some of our corporate partners who will then interview them for jobs that they have set aside, so that we're hoping to funnel as many people into employment as possible through this program. So that is a lot of information in a short period of time, but it's really just to give you a sense of both the depth and the breadth that Generator covers with our programming. And we're always happy to answer more questions if any of these are of interest to you. So where are these programs taking place? They're really not just in Wisconsin, although we have several of them here. We're scattered across the US with 45 plus programs across all of these different dimensions in a range of different locations. You can see, in the bottom right corner, we're in Puerto Rico. We're launching a new program in Anchorage, Alaska, all across the Midwest and then beyond. And so what this allows us to do in our programs is really to dig deep into our network and say, hey, we might be supporting a company in Wausau, Wisconsin, and we're able to connect them with investors in Alabama and with mentors in LA and beyond. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and I'm going to let him dive a little bit deeper into some of our programs and events that are available for social entrepreneurs.
All right, thank you so much, Lauren, for that overview of Generator. So as promised, I wanted to talk a little bit more about our PreAccelerators, because this is where a lot of people are familiar with generators through our gBETA program. It's the way that we interact with probably the most startups, and it's a really good way for us to bring people into the entrepreneurial system. So what is it? So as Lauren mentioned, it's a PreAccelerator, but like what do we actually mean by that? So this is a free, and what I mean by free is that it doesn't cost anything, and there's also no equity exchange. So it's truly a free 7-week program for early stage companies with local roots. So each program is capped at 5 teams and requires no fees and no equity. So let's unpack this. So if you're looking at, the startup scene right now, it's really popular, and you're thinking, how can I get involved? Or maybe I'm working on a company now and I like really want to pursue venture capital. Maybe gBETA is a really excellent way to do that. So it's free advice for 7 weeks where we'll work with each of those teams to really kind of like hack their growth together, get them ready for talking with investors. And it's really just like putting this final polish on the companies as they're going out to fundraise. Something also really special about Generator with all of our programs is that we love to use the word concierge. And that's why we will cap our programs at 5 teams only. So the programs are, still pretty competitive at the gBETA level, but, when we work with those 5 teams, we make a huge commitment to them. And we really like that personalized connection too. So really the goal of gBETA is to make sure that we're producing really, really strong early stage companies that are going off to do really amazing things. And speaking of, what are our own goals for the program is that we hope that 1/3 of our graduates will hit one of several metrics or potentially more. We hope that they go on to be accepted into a full-time investment-based accelerator or raise a seed round of at least $50,000. And I'll talk a little bit about our success rate in just a second, but really we see this as an excellent next step for some of our gBETA companies where, perhaps a full-time investment-based accelerator like the Generator flagship programs is a really good next step for them because they get the investment of $100,000 in exchange for a little bit of equity of their company. And so now that they have some working capital, they're in like a totally different position now, in a really advantageous position to kind of accelerate the company even further. Or alternatively, they might go out and raise $50,000 from venture capitalists, angel investors. There's a lot of options forward for them, but really gBETA is to help get them to that stage, and we'll track those metrics of the company for the lifetime. So to talk about some of the statistics of the companies we've worked with, as you can see, I wasn't joking when we said that most of the teams we work with come through gBETA, and that's definitely what a lot of people know us for, is that we've had nearly 500 companies go through our program, and we're probably going to exceed 500 very shortly. And our success metric too is around 50%. So, our goal is to get at least 1/3, and we've been pretty consistently around 50% of those companies hitting one of those 2 metrics too. So, we really are finding the best of the best when it comes to our startups. And collectively, the startups have raised millions of dollars too. And there's a lot of other impact metrics that we'll track too, the jobs that they create, the value that they add to their communities. And I think something too that the social impact team will talk a lot about is like the intangible types of benefits that we provide to the teams too. You know, like Lauren mentioned that Generator has this really strong belief in expanding who we think of as founders. And, you know, I think we all have our own stories of like, you know, founders that go through the program and they come out like seeing themselves as founders. You know, there's groups of people that are told like consistently that they don't fit the profile of who a founder should be. They don't have the right experience. And then they come to gBETA and we say, you know, that a favorite phrase of mine is like, if not you, then who? Like, who is going to solve this problem? And Generator is the place where we say, like, it's you. Like, you are the right person to do this because you have the right lived experience, you have the right mindset, you have the right connections, whatever it might be, whatever your unfair advantage is the technical term, will help you find that. So you might be saying that sounds good and well, Joe, but like, what's the catch? There's a free program. Like, how can that be? Well, there is no catch. The programs are free thanks to our many different sponsors. You know, each program will have a unique mix of sponsors. For our gBETA social impact programming, we are so fortunate to be partnered with the American Family Institute for Corporate and Social Impact. And they've been a really wonderful sponsor for us. And, you know, you might be asking, well, why would someone sponsor these types of programs to allow me to get a free program, you know, 7 weeks of support and ongoing support at no cost? And, you know, as Lauren mentioned, there's a lot of benefits to fostering the startup community. You know, Lauren specifically talked about the arts and culture scene. Like, that's something that brings people into the city. We work with a lot of technology companies, and tech brings in good talent too. You know, we have a lot of people in our Wisconsin programs coming from other states to say Wisconsin is becoming this new tech hub. So it creates really good, high quality jobs. You know, startups are creating organic job growth too, not through mergers or acquisitions or anything like that. So there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of reasons why all of these folks are interested in sponsoring these programs. So to talk a little bit about our program specifically, as I said, we're sponsored by the AmFam Institute, and we work with them in two different priority areas. The first is K through 12 education, and the second is what we define as economic opportunity for all, which includes things like reentry, recidivism, criminal justice, justice tech, and others too. And part of that partnership with the Institute was we felt that those are really, really important priority areas, but there's just not a, you know, a burgeoning startup scene, or at least there wasn't. I think there is now. That Generator has been working in these areas too. So while our programs are specifically focused on those two priority areas, we will still love to connect with teams outside of that. So you might be thinking, I've got a social enterprise, but I'm not K through 12 or criminal justice. That's okay. Still contact us, because you never know. Sometimes people actually find out that they would fit into those spaces, and otherwise we might have connections or advice in terms of how to get your social enterprise going no matter what you're doing. So to talk a little bit about some other ways to get connected, you might be saying, I don't know, maybe a 7-week program or even a 4-week G-Alpha is not exactly the right next step for me. Maybe I want something else. Well, we do have our Onramp series, which has a startup track as a component to that. And we have a lot of different Onramp ones too that might be really relevant to you. There might be others too, but two that might be really good is the Education and Workforce Innovation Conference, which we have coming up very soon on June 17th. And we also have our Onramp Impact Conference too, which is really focused more broadly on social entrepreneurs. As Lauren said, this is kind of the merging of the corporate side and the startup side too. So we do have a startup track that is really ideal for, is really ideal for startups that are saying, you know, I kind of want to like rub shoulders with some really big corporate players in this space. So maybe I want to attend like the conference track, and that's a really great way to, you know, or the startup track too, where it's this connection between startups and corporations. So there's a good mix of opportunities for you. So what I want you to take away from this conversation is that there are multiple ways to be a social entrepreneur and get involved with Generator. So with that being said, I'm going to turn things over to Mfoniso, who will give a quick introduction to Nicole, and then Nicole's going to tell you all about her experience as a social entrepreneur.
Thanks, Joe. Nicole, thanks again for joining us this afternoon. I'm excited to chat with you. For those that might be unfamiliar with you or your work, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Nicole Sdao. I am founder and CEO of Ultrarise. Ultrarise means to exercise your altruism. And yes, the name came to me when I cried up to the heavens and said, I just want people to exercise their altruism. And I went, ooh, that sounds like a good word. I shall trademark that. So I did. Go ahead.
With some of those social impact programs that Joe just outlined, how have G-Alpha or gBETA helped you and helped Ultrarise?
Yeah, so I actually, I'm kind of a long-term founder as far as that goes. I'm one that's iterated and just kept moving that needle forward. So I was a part of gBETA. The name of my company was different. It was kind of more targeted solely just for nonprofits. And as the resources of gBETA helped me understand really what I was getting myself into and really the bigger picture I could accomplish, I started iterating, and Ultrarise became what it is now, and was able to be part of G-Alpha because I was entering a different space. So to the points that Joe made about the differences kind of between the gBETA and G-Alpha, even though I had a product already, with gBETA, I was entering such a new space with the judicial system that it was really key for me to be able to be a part of the G-Alpha program to understand that space better.
Yeah. Now, I know I can answer this from my own personal experience because of all the help you've given back to me and my social impact teams. But in your own words, could you describe some of the connection points or collaborations that you've had through Generator?
Yeah, it's, I think I'll do it from two different ways because it's been kind of great that way. As a participant in the program, it's, I kind of likened it to, you know, I'd be one that was watching Shark Tank all the time, and then you get part of one of these programs and you go, oh, that's kind of like Sesame Street. It shows you how to pronounce the words maybe, but you have really no idea what's going on. So being a part of Generator and the G-Alpha and gBETA programs helps put everything into context. So as a participant, that was my biggest aha. Since being a part of those programs, what's been wonderful is the continued connections you guys offer, and I love being able to be a part of the mentoring piece for your incoming cohorts. I feel my job in that situation is to tell them how to get the best and most out of the gBETA and G-Alpha programs. And I find those connections super valuable. I love seeing what others are doing and then how we can collaborate, because that's my mindset, because that's how Generator creates your culture and community. Like, how do we do this together?
Yeah. And so what inspired you to create Ultrarise?
Many things have gone into that. It started off, I would say I'm a recovering volunteer addict. So just seeing a disconnect between volunteers and nonprofits. And then the bigger piece that really the volunteer data has become so important in our society. And yet the volunteer themselves they don't have access to their own data and can't keep track of it. So Ultrarise is ultimately, we like to say we're the Fitbit for your altruism. You know, so that's a huge piece for us. And then kind of moving into the college admissions scandal, if anybody's seen that documentary on Netflix, that's where we come in too, because over 60% of college admissions officials use this data point as a tiebreaker, but it's not proven, it's not standardized. So we're trying to tackle that on education, making that a more equitable, fair way to make sure you're getting admitted into college. And then, of course, the judicial system, just with everything that's been, we won't go over that, but everything that's been going on there. One of the things that is used, especially in the juvenile justice system, is court order community service. And that's a hot mess of paper and everything else too. So trying to bring that into a different light as well really has points for me in all directions.
Yeah. And then when did you first feel like a founder?
Ooh. That's a good one. For me, I think it was being a part of gBETA. So that would have been about 3 years ago now. But I do want to make a distinction. There's something too that has occurred over this course. Is there is a difference between an entrepreneur and a founder. I was an entrepreneur 20 years before, 15 years before that, because I'm actually a chiropractor. We own our own business, right? So technically I'm an entrepreneur, but there's a difference between an entrepreneur and a founder. And there's a difference between a CEO or starting in a startup. And then there's a difference between the CEO and a founder. So yeah, a founder, if that had that word and that understanding, once I understood that there's a difference between kind of entrepreneur and startup, for me anyway.
That's a great point. And then how long have you been working on Ultrarise, and where would you say you're at now stage-wise?
So I like to say I put the universe on notice when I spoke the words out loud that I wanted to do something to help all nonprofits. And that was back in the fall of 2013. So again, I've iterated, like this is the third name change that I've had to get to this point. And it's, failing forward, whatever you want to call it, but it's been such a great learning process for me, and I'm excited to be at this point, and it's all in God's timing. So that's one thing I give it up to as well. So we are at the point now where we've got our product. We're going through, so it's free. Everybody out there, go ahead and download the Ultrarise app. It can be your accountability partner for doing some good in your communities. And we're onboarding a few schools right now that have mandatory volunteer requirements for graduation. So we're kind of pre-revenue, but at that tipping point. So.
Yeah. And then you've mentioned some iterations, but how else has your idea sort of changed along the way?
Well, we had a web-based platform initially, and then realized, boy, if we really want to hit our target as far as who this was centered around, which is the volunteer, that needs to travel with them. So that means we need to create an app. So we created the Ultrarise app. Now what's interesting is now we're making a desktop version for that, because now organizations see the value of utilizing Ultrarise for their organization. So now we want to have a desktop version for the organization side. So that's kind of truly a full circle right there of iteration.
Yeah, and then something that you keep saying is we instead of I. Can you tell us a little bit about your team?
Sure. It's myself. I wear multiple hats, so maybe I just feel there's multiple personalities there too. I don't know. But then I've got a great co-founder. His name is Jesse Rosemarinowski. Veteran, so he's all about service to his core. So it's awesome for our company culture there. We've got TC Bell, who's our marketing kind of advisor guru, and then our CTO, which is Iron Forge. They've been great, and they keep us in the loop on all the updates and everything we need to do that way too. So
great. And given how great this past year has been for everyone with all the certainty and normality, I'm curious, what challenges have you and Ultrarise been presented with?
Well, we were literally supposed to launch March 22nd, 2020, an app to tell everybody to go in their communities to volunteer, and we were scheduled to launch in 2 schools. So yeah, that was a punch. With that being said, I'm really proud that I'm still here. it's in my nature, like this is going to happen. And that the growth we've had was all organic as far as, because it didn't make sense to do any paid advertising or anything. So any downloads of the app, usage of the app was completely because people felt the need. So that was actually great validation as far as I was concerned, that, yeah, we are needed. And then having the new year start and again, getting 4 new schools onboarded is one of those, okay, schools can breathe again. Let's do this. Let's get going.
And what's next for Ultrarise? What excites you the most about some of your future prospects?
Well, one of our biggest things is that we are partnered with World Values Day. So we're going to get Ultrarise out to the world. They are looking, their theme this year is reconnection, and reconnecting to the community would be a huge value. So we're partnering with them and using Ultrarise to help kind of show the impact that we're going to have throughout the world. So keep that on your radar. That's in October, and we're excited for that.
Great. And aside from Generator, how have you engaged with other business programs or resources along the way?
I've engaged with GAN, so the Global Accelerator Network, which is something that, I'm just saying this for those listening, that participants of a generator type program kind of automatically get to be a part of GAN as far as getting information. So I've made sure I've tapped into those, and those have been great, and have, again, walked away with valuable connections. My son asked, last year we had a great partnership with March of Dimes, and my son asked, well, how did you get that connection? And so I took a moment and I went, wow, that started 2 years ago because I went to an event in GAN in Denver that then took me, I met somebody there that took me to Las Vegas for an event there, that I met somebody there. They introduced me to somebody in LinkedIn. That person introduced me to somebody at March of Dimes. It was that easy and that quick.
And my last question is very important. What advice would you give to future social impact founders? No pressure.
I would say, I personally have had to, so being a founder, and I was asked like whether or not I'm a for-profit, not-for-profit, why didn't I become a not-for-profit? And I just felt I could generate my own revenue instead of having to worry about getting grants and going up against other nonprofits. So that's one thing to think about. But because of that, when you're pitching, it's all about the numbers, which is great. That's what the investors want to hear and need to hear. But as an impact founder, those numbers are a means to the end. Don't lose yourself in those numbers. You've got a bigger mission, a bigger thing. Those numbers are to support your mission. So yeah, you go after them and you grab them and you make sure you got as much as you can because your mission is that big that it impacts that many people. That should be the mindset going in.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Nicole. I think we have some time for additional questions from the audience. Let's see what we have.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or put them in the Q&A, whatever's easier for you. I have a couple that just came up that you kind of dropped some crumbs, Nicole. So that last comment that you made about, being asked a lot why you didn't become a nonprofit or how you chose to be a for-profit. I'm interested to hear your perspective on that and your kind of decision-making process of how you did make this decision to be a for-profit company.
Sure. So I've been on the board of multiple nonprofits, and just seeing like the one board I got on, and I flat out told the nonprofit, I said, you've got to stop asking for money. They were like, what? And I said, because again, I was a chiropractor owning my own business. I said, as a business, we need you to ask. Sponsorships are so much more important to us. That means way more to us than a donation. So tell me I will have my name in small print somewhere and I'll give you the money, but don't just ask me for the money. So just seeing the cycle of always them in this battle of needing the funds, I felt two things. One, I have a product, I'm servicing a need that has a value and should garner a fee for. So I can support our own mission and our functionality through that process. And the other part was, somebody said, well, if you become a nonprofit, then you can apply for grants for all the tech that you want to build out. And I thought, gosh, that just doesn't feel right. I'm trying to help nonprofits. I feel if I'm applying for a grant that another nonprofit is also applying for, now I'm a competitor. I don't want to be that. I want to be self-sustaining so that we can have that bigger, broader impact for everyone.
Wow, that's so helpful to hear it from the founder point of view, because I think it's a question that Mfoniso, Joe, and I talk about all the time with founders about, we'll think about being a for-profit and we'll kind of walk through different pros and cons, but hearing your perspective, makes a lot of sense from the, the view of you're building up this business and there's different reasons for you to go that direction. I have another question that I wrote down while you were talking. If I can go ahead, then we'll see what else has come through. But I guess the question is like, thinking about Ultrarise, you told us what it is, but how does it really work? And then how, from your founder perspective of building the company up, like, how did you know how to make it work? And how have you figured out the tech that you needed? Like, how does someone do that if you see this problem that you want to solve, but you are not sure how to actually do it?
So I didn't know how it was going to work, hence why I had to go through so many iterations. And that's fine. I think, the whole perfection, what is it? Perfection kills, I can't remember the phrase. Somebody help me out. Anyway.
Progress? Is it perfection kills
yes,
progress?
There you go. Yes. So I've thankfully never been like that. I'd rather try it out, put the clay together and walk away and go, does it stand? Is it okay? Oh, we got to try, so yeah, it was just a learning process, plain and simple. There's no magic dust on that one. I can't give any magic dust on that one. As far as what the app does, so we help volunteers track, verify, and maintain a lifelong journey of community service. So whether they have to do it because they're being mandated by like a school organization, or they're trying to get scholarships or something, and so they need it verified, all that can happen within the app. So it's no more pieces of paper that have to be signed off on, signing into one type of application because that's what that organization uses. This is for the volunteer. This is always with the volunteer and can be continually added upon for their life. And again, that's the ultimate goal. If we were all as concerned about the good we were putting in our communities as we were how many steps we're taking in them, they'd be better communities to walk in. So my goal is that at the end of the year, people aren't just thinking, oh, I got to go to the gym. I'm going to go to the gym this many more times next year. I'm going to do this many. They're going to also say, and I want to do 20 more hours in my community of volunteering. And that's where we come in. Then Ultrarise is that accountability partner to help make that happen.
That's awesome.
Well, thanks again, Nicole, for your thoughts and for your work. And thank you all for coming today. We hope to see you in one of our upcoming programs. If you're interested in just chatting and learning more, Joe and I and Lauren, we always have office hours and welcome any of you joining. And yeah, just look forward to working with you guys.
Yeah, if there's no further questions, we can give you a few more minutes back in your day, but let us know in the chat if you'd like to keep in touch. I did post our gBETA social impact website up above, and then also Ultrarize's website. So those are the best ways to track down our office hour links, as Mfoniso mentioned, and several of the resources that we talked about are also in the chat.
Thank you.
I don't see any questions coming through, so I think we'll call it a day.